Good afternoon. My name is Shaifali Aggarwal, and I am EVP of Business Development and Strategy at Stratus Prep, as well as a senior strategist, and I got my MBA from Harvard Business School. I'm really excited to be here today, and I wanted to thank our partner, Beat the GMAT, and thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to listen in this afternoon. And with that, I am going to delve right into our topic for today, which is debunking 5 MBA application myths. So in terms of the agenda, there are a few things that we will cover today. First off will be introduction. So I will provide a little bit of background with respect to who I am, and then tell you a little bit about our company, Stratus Prep. Then I'll move into the heart of the presentation, which is debunking 5 MBA application myths. And then I'll try to wrap that all together by going through some case studies. Finally, I'll end the presentation with some key takeaways that I would like you to leave the presentation with. And then we have an exclusive partnership offer for you for taking the time to listen in today. So with respect to my background, as I mentioned, my name is Shaifali, and I am a senior strategist at Stratus Prep. I graduated from Princeton University with a degree in economics, and I got my MBA from Harvard Business School. I've always been very passionate about helping people attain their educational goals. And so when I was at HBS, I was actually the VP admissions of the Women's Student Association, which is really the largest female-focused organization on campus. And in that role, I worked directly with the admissions office as a bridge between current women on campus and prospective and admitted women. And this is really the closest that you can get to the admissions office as a student at HBS. So it was a very rewarding experience for me, and also a very informative one. Professionally, I've actually spent most of my career as a finance professional on Wall Street, where I worked in investment banking right after graduating from Princeton, covering financial institutions, and after business school, working in the investment management industry, where I was a consumer staples equity analyst, analyzing stocks and providing recommendations to portfolio managers. But I always had an urge to do my own thing and kind of go down the entrepreneurial path. And so I started my own online media company before eventually joining Stratus Prep to pursue my passion for education and giving back. So over the past few years, I've successfully worked with candidates to help them gain admission to the schools of their choice, which includes the top schools such as HBS, Stanford, Wharton, and Kellogg. And to me, it's really rewarding to be able to work with candidates just like you who are seeking admission and to really help you craft the right story. So who is Stratus Prep? We are the world's leading admissions consulting firm, and we were founded in 2006 by a Harvard Business School graduate and also a Harvard Law School graduate. So he had his JD MBA degree, and he started the company out of his apartment. It's been really exciting for us to be on the Inc. 5000 list, both in 2014 and 2015 as the 19th fastest growing education company. But as I mentioned before, what's really rewarding is being able to be part of a team that helps hundreds of clients get into schools each year and crafting their stories. What's also really great is working with our clients to help them gain millions of dollars in merit-based financial aid, and this is all based on the strength of application. And as an example, a client who I worked with just this past round one was accepted to Wharton on a full ride. And so, as you can imagine, she was absolutely thrilled, and we were super excited as well. We've also been featured in the top media publications, so Inc., Forbes. We also have contributors to U.S. News and World Report. And I would encourage you just to do a quick Google search. So for instance, just type in Stratus Prep Forbes, and you'll get access to a ton of really great material and relevant material on the application process. So for instance, there is information on how community involvement can enrich your application. Things on whether you are prepared for MBA, for the MBA application season. So really great information that will just keep you more informed and provide you with some more tidbits and really provide you with additional information to keep you ahead of the pack. So I would definitely encourage you to take a look at that. So with respect to the timeline, I really cannot stress enough how important it is to start now. It really is never too early to start. It really enables you to get a leg up on the competition, and it allows us to work with clients to really enhance their profile. So find out your areas of strength, which is great, but also really isolate areas of weakness and turn those into strengths. So filling in gaps and making any changes now, as opposed to when you're just a month out from the application. And it also allows us, in doing that, to help you achieve and set yourself up for the greatest chance for success. So as an example, I'm actually working with a client right now who just graduated from college. And she has started the process now, even though she's applying 2 or 3 years out. So whether you are a college senior or you are thinking of applying in a year or round 1 or round 2 or even next year, there's a lot that we can be helping you with right now. All right, so I am going to transition into the 5 myths. So the first one is that a candidate or a perfect candidate formula exists and that you're competing against the entire application pool. So the reality is that there is no perfect formula. So instead, the admissions committee, while they definitely try to make the process as objective as possible, the reality is that it's made up of people just like you and just like me, who have their own experiences and beliefs. And so what ends up happening is when they analyze applications, there is a little bit of subjectivity that goes into that process. So what I always tell my clients is to be as authentic and as compelling to themselves as possible. Because the more authentic and genuine that you are, the more that you will appeal to the admissions committee. And that's really a factor that can bridge that subjectivity line. So really be as authentic as you can be. And don't try to compare yourself to what you think is a perfect candidate, or perhaps you had a friend who was admitted in a prior year and you want to follow what they did. Because what worked for them will most likely not work for you. So you really should be authentic to who you are, because that is what resonates the most with the admissions committee. The second piece of reality is that the admissions committee's goal is to really create a diverse class. So I'm going to actually skip ahead to the next slide because it shows this visually. But they want a diverse class that cuts across gender, industry, geography. So they're actually evaluating candidates in different buckets. So you really need to think about how you can distinguish yourself from that bucket. So for instance, if you are a female focused on marketing in the consumer package space in Europe, you're going to be compared against other females focusing on marketing in that industry. If you are a male working in private equity in San Francisco, you're going to be compared against other males working in finance on the West Coast. So it's really, really important to think about what makes you unique within that bucket. And then finally, a lot of people believe that with respect to the perfect formula, that you need a perfect GMAT score. So while it's great to get a 780 or a 790 or an 800, it's not necessary. The GMAT is really a hurdle that you must overcome to be competitive, but it's a threshold. And no one is really admitted just based on their GMAT score. And I'm actually going to go into some case studies at the end of the presentation to demonstrate that. But you really want to take a look at what the average GMAT score is for the schools that you're applying to and try to be within a range of that. I would say 20 to 30 points. And also think of your demographic. So if you are an Indian male engineer, your GMAT score will have to be a little higher only because your bucket is scoring a little higher. But you don't need an 800 to be successful at the top school. So in this slide, I'm actually going to go into a little bit more depth with respect to what business schools are actually looking for. The first is vital stats. So when you think about your candidacy, schools want to understand what your academic performance was. So that does include your GMAT score, but like I said, it's a threshold. And it also includes your undergraduate GPA. So if, for instance, you had a GPA that was weaker when you were in college, schools will want to get a little bit more color about that. They'll want to know, was there a compelling reason why that GPA was low? Was there a rising trend over time? What have you done to demonstrate that you can actually handle the rigor of the curriculum? And one thing you can do is take an online class in a quantitative subject to show that you can handle quantitative things. They also want to understand what your professional work experience is. So what are you doing currently? How does it relate to what you would like to do post-MBA? What are you doing in your role where you have taken on more responsibility? How have you had impact on the organization? And similarly, they want to understand your involvement in the community. So all the top schools want to develop leaders who not only give back to their organizations professionally, but also give back to their communities. So they want to assess, or they will assess, what you've done in your community to have impact. And underlying all of this is leadership. Schools want to develop leaders and see how you have developed leadership to have impact on your organizations and community. Now, the second aspect that business schools are seeking are your unique personal stories. And this goes back to what I had mentioned before about being genuine and authentic. Schools want to see who you are, and they assess that by looking at what your key accomplishments are and why you consider them to be such. They want to understand how you've grown over time from your experiences. They want to know what diverse experiences you've had and what perspective that has given you. So let me give you an example of a client who I worked with, not this past round one, but a year ago. And she was an international applicant in her early 30s. And she was a serial entrepreneur and had faced a lot of setbacks as a female entrepreneur from friends, from family, from other business people in her society. But she really focused on her resilience and her persistence. And that was just so authentic to who she was that her essays were just very touching and very human. And she was eventually accepted to Stanford as a first-year student this year. So again, don't compare yourself to other people. Really think about what makes you unique, because every single person has very interesting experiences. And then finally, business schools want to understand fit. So why are you pursuing an MBA now? And why are you interested in their program in particular? So it's not enough to talk generically about why you want the MBA. You really have to do your homework. You should visit schools. You should talk to students, talk to alums. If you can't visit a school, listen to webinars. Many schools will send admissions committee members or admissions officers to different cities to conduct sessions. So really get to know a school really, really well, because schools will want to assess that fit. And then finally, what are your unique contributions? What can you give to the school? What can you give to your class? That's very different to help round it out. So the next myth is that your chances of admission will increase if your recommender is a CEO or is a senior member of your company or has a high-profile name. And the reality is that schools are looking for supervisors who can write very deeply about their work experiences with you and back everything up with examples. And they want supervisors or recommenders who can demonstrate through the examples that you really excel amongst your peer group. So if you're working with a startup, or let's just say you're working in a startup and you're working very closely with the CEO, then that's fine. The CEO has directly observed your work. But if your CEO or managing director or someone very senior is very removed, you do not want that person writing your recommendation letter because it will come across as too generic. I had a client just this past year who was working in finance, and we decided to have an associate write his recommendation letter because the associate had worked with him very closely. So this was not even a VP, not a managing director, but the associate was able to write a very strong recommendation about my client's work at the company, and he was eventually accepted to Wharton. So that piece of the application was very, very important. And you want your recommenders to be able to touch upon different qualities. So qualities such as how well you communicate, your leadership skills, your analytical rigor. I'd also throw in there your ability to take initiative. But these are things that should gel with your story as well. The third myth is that you can write one essay and reuse it for each school's application. Now, the reality is that while the questions may seem very similar, when you look at them, they're actually very different and they're very nuanced. What I see sometimes is people writing very generic responses with respect to why they want the MBA. And it's very easy for the admissions committee to see right through that. They can tell when someone is just copying and pasting from one essay to another because it's just not specific enough. You want to make sure that you can really differentiate each application and explain clearly why that school in particular. And this can involve talking about specific classes, specific clubs, resources and programs that are very unique to that school that will help you if you think about attaining your post-MBA goal. The other sort of aspect to think about when it comes to content is people will use the same examples, which is fine, but you want to make sure that if you use the same examples across different business schools, that you are, first of all, answering the question clearly, but that you're also tailoring the example to fit what that school is looking for, and that you're addressing the qualities that those schools seek as well. So be very careful about what you write in each essay, and don't just lift and copy. It's the MBA application process is a very in-depth process, and it's very important that you take the time to really put into the process, and that's where we help clients as well. The fourth myth is that there is a right amount of work experience. And while there certainly is an average with respect to when people tend to go to business school, remember it's just that. it's an average. So there are people who go on with fewer years of experience and people who go on with more. And so the right amount of work experience really depends upon where you are in your career and why you're pursuing an MBA now. So going back to the example of that international applicant who was in her early 30s who was accepted to Stanford, she had over 10 years of work experience, some of it as a serial entrepreneur, and after facing setbacks, she realized that an MBA could really get her to where she wanted to be. So for her, that was the right amount of time. I've worked with other clients. A couple of years ago, I worked with a client who was working in finance, and she was working in private equity and had 2 years of work experience. For her, in those 2 years, she was able to take on more responsibility, and her recommenders pointed to that. So the 2 years was enough for her in terms of demonstrating her abilities and showing why she needed the MBA, and she was accepted to HBS. So it's a very personal decision as to when the right time is to apply. But it does vary from person to person, and there really is no right amount. The fifth myth is that most MBA applicants tackle the application process alone. But the reality is that most people are actually engaging with an admissions consultant. So 57% of students apply to grad school with an admissions consultant. That's a big number. So most of your competitors, or I shouldn't say competitors, but candidates who are in the pool as well, will also most likely be working with a consultant. And the reasons for that are pretty straightforward. One is consultants, just like those at Stratus Prep, have been doing this for many years. They can see the trends in the space, and they have a sense of what business schools, or a very strong sense in terms of what business schools are looking for and how that can connect to your own personal background and story. The other thing to keep in mind is that consultants, and especially at Stratus Prep, we've all gone to the top MBA programs, and we've gone through the process ourselves. So we know exactly what you're going through. So having gone through it ourselves, we're in a unique position to help you navigate the process. And we've also been in programs with peers who've gone through the process as well. So we've had very close connections with our peers. Many of us have been admissions readers in our admissions offices or have had some interaction with the admissions office while at school, and that is very invaluable. So I want to take some time now to tie everything together through some case studies. In this particular case studies with Jen and Pratik, what's really interesting about both of them is that they both had weaker undergraduate GPAs, but were able to overcome that with interesting stories. So Jen went to a top 10 undergrad and had a 3.0 GPA. Her GMAT score was a 690, so that was a quant score of 44 on the GMAT. What was interesting, though, is that she got her master's in engineering management from a good school, and she had a GPA of 3.9. So she was able to overcome that weaker GPA by pointing to the work she had done in her master's program. But what's also very interesting about Jen is that she had 4 years of experience in brand management and healthcare, but she also developed a story around launching new consumer healthcare products in the emerging markets, which is something she had pursued as an undergrad. So we really worked with Jen to develop that story. There were clear threads tying everything together. Everything was very, very clear in terms of the steps she had taken through her career, And even though she had that weaker GPA and that in the average GMAT score, she was admitted to HBS and Wharton. Pratik was an international applicant, and actually he's an applicant who I'm currently working with right now. He attended an international university. Again, his GPA was a little bit more on the weaker side, but he did have a master's in pharmacy with upper second class honors. His GPA was a 670, but the quant was a little stronger than Jen, so he had a quant score of 48. And all of his work experience was being a pharmacist. But what was really interesting about Pratik is that he developed his story around making medicines accessible to all. So he was able to very clearly tie together his experience as a pharmacist with very personal experiences that he went through and that he observed with family members when it came to healthcare. He's also in his early 30s, so an older applicant. So he was able to overcome his weaker GMAT score and his lower undergraduate marks with a clear story. And the other thing I should note about Pratik is that he also took an online quantitative class to demonstrate his ability to do well in quantitative material. He took a statistics class and got an A. So this was an instance where he created what we call an alternative transcript. So he took an online class and did well. So that's something we definitely encourage clients to do if you have a weaker undergraduate GPA. So what I really want you to take away from these two case studies is that the GMAT is just one factor in the admissions process. You can think about creating an alternative transcript and also make sure to communicate your goals clearly, and that's where a consultant can help you, and to really think about what your values are and what you can contribute to the experience, as well as what makes you unique and how you can tie together your different professional and personal experiences to create a very compelling story. So Pratik applied to Michigan, Ross, and Cornell, amongst a couple of other programs. So these are his top few programs, and he did receive interviews at these two schools, and we are awaiting results, which we should hear very, very soon. Okay. So these next two case studies, Nick and Felix, I wanted to share with you the importance of starting early. So both Nick and Felix started with us at least 6 months, if not a year, ahead of the deadline. And so we were able to really work with them to fully develop their profile. So Nick went to a state university, top 30 school in his state, and had a GPA of 3.6. He also had a GMAT score of 730. So his credentials were really great on the academic side. He was a finance professional and had really strong extracurricular activities. So Nick came to us early because he realized that he was a male working in finance. And so we worked with him to really develop a story that focused on his finance skills and his experiences in finance and his interest in the emerging markets. And so we were able to create a story, and we spent a lot of time on the strategy phase so that we could really differentiate him from other people in his bucket. And Nick was admitted to Wharton, Columbia, and Booth, and will be attending Wharton next year. Now, Felix was a reapplicant, and we work with a lot of reapplicants, especially with respect to helping them diagnose the weaknesses in their prior applications, strengthening them, and then helping them craft their story. So Felix was a reapplicant, and also he was on the older side, had 10 years of experience in education and physics. He had gone to an international university with a 3.8 GPA and a GMAT score of 700 with a quant of 49. So we really worked with Felix to tie in his experiences in education and physics, which actually made him very unique with his professional experiences to craft the right story. And by doing that, Felix had very different results this time around. He was admitted to Wharton, to Fuqua, and a couple of other schools. So the key here is that it's never too early to start. And by starting early, we can really diagnose your gaps and very authentically strengthen them and find areas or things that you can do to improve your profile. So if you are applying, as I mentioned, round 1, round 2, if you're thinking of applying next year, work with a consultant to develop your profile fully, because we can really work with you to target your academic weaknesses, any weaknesses on the professional side, and any weaknesses on the extracurricular side. So how can Stratus Prep help you throughout this process? Well, there are many ways in which we can help you. So this is our application roadmap. So it's fantastic that you're here today because you've already made the decision to apply. The first step that I would definitely recommend doing is taking the GMAT. You can, and we definitely have clients who do it simultaneously to while working on their applications. But it's definitely to your advantage to get the GMAT out of the way before you have to worry about the application. So if you're applying in round 1, I would encourage you to try to take the GMAT by the early part of the summer. If you're applying in round 2, you can take it by the end of the summer, early fall. That's always really great. And with the GMAT score, as I mentioned, you want to make sure you hit that threshold and do the best that you can do. And we actually have tutors here at Stratus Prep, so we provide individual private tutoring on the GMAT. Our tutors have scored above a 760 on the actual exam. So that is the top 1%. And they have at least 2 years of work experience. So they're 2 years of experience tutoring. So they're very experienced in the tutoring space. And what's really great is they really create customized curriculum. So they will diagnose your weaknesses and really focus on your weaknesses so that they can turn it into strengths. So that's really the first part of the process, is making sure that you're thinking about taking the GMAT. The next part of our process focuses on strategy. And that's really the introspection, personal story, and school selection boxes that are shown here. And with the strategy, what we're really trying to do is tease out your experiences and your accomplishments across the personal, professional, and academic realm. Since, as mentioned, those are the areas that schools will evaluate you on. And then using those experiences to help you craft the right story that's authentic to who you are. So we're really trying to show admissions committees what your key qualities are, how those qualities will help you as you think about attaining your goals, and then show them those qualities through actual examples. We're also, through this phase, will help you with school selection and make sure that you're choosing programs that you're excited to attend that fit in with your goals. So that's really the strategy phase. Then we also help out with your profile and resume. And now remember, the resume is really, really important in the process. It's a one-page summary of what you've done academically, from an extracurricular perspective, professionally. And we want to make sure that your resume is as impactful as it can be. So we work with you very closely to make sure that you are really putting everything in there that's impactful, and we even have a template that we suggest using on the resume side. With respect to the next step, essay outlining and essay writing, that's really the next phase. So once that strategy is in place, we can really move on to the essay outlining stage. And we take the essay outlining stage really, really seriously. You know, we really want to make sure that the content is in place, that the structure is in place before you actually start writing. So once you've done the outlining, then we work with you on essay writing, go through drafts of that to make sure that your answers are clear, concise, and also that they are authentic to who you are. And then finally, you'll submit your application. Then comes the post-submission phase, which focuses on helping clients with interview prep, helping them make the decision, and then helping with a waitlist strategy and with scholarship negotiation if appropriate. So as you can tell, it's a very, very comprehensive process, and we are with you every step of the way. Now, this is one of my favorite slides, and it's because it really stresses our team-based approach here at Stratus. And this is a key reason why I love working at Stratus Prep. Our process with clients is very collaborative. So as an applicant, you are assigned a primary consultant who will be with you every step of the way throughout that process. But we also have senior strategists who are part of every client account. And so what the senior strategist does is provide additional input at different stages of the process. So the senior strategist will provide input on the strategy phase. They'll provide additional written input on your essay outline. So it's really great to get that additional feedback from someone who has done this many times before. There will also be a secondary reader who will take a look at your essays, and this really provides the objective aspect of the process, make sure your essays are as clear as they can be. And there's also a proofreader at the end of the process who takes a look at your essays. And throughout the whole process, there's an account manager who will also be with you throughout your journey, and he makes sure that everything is running as smoothly as possible. So it's a very great process. And clients love the fact that they're working with a team of people who are very, very dedicated to them. In terms of our consultants, we have a very deep roster of consultants who have gone to all of the top schools and who have very different experiences and very interesting experiences. So as you can see here, our consultants have gone to HBS, Stanford, Wharton, Kellogg, Columbia, Fuqua, Johnson, and the industry experience is expansive. So finance, our consultants have worked in healthcare, they are entrepreneurs, they've worked in education. So I tend to work a lot, as you can imagine, with investment banking and finance clients. I tend to work with those who are interested in entrepreneurship or who are entrepreneurs, general management. I do have some clients in the entertainment and media space. So we work very closely to make sure that we match each client with a counselor who the client will resonate with. We also have something called the 4+ School Guarantee, which is actually very unique in the industry. And essentially what the 4+ School Guarantee is that if by any chance one of our applicants does not gain admission to at least one school, we'll work, or when working with us on 4 or more schools, then we'll work with that applicant for free the following year on up to the same number of schools. So it does have to be a 4+ school package that you purchase. But what's really great about this is that it shows how committed we are to your success. We are here, again, through every step of your journey, and we are 100% dedicated to helping you attain your educational goals. So this slide is really summarizing the last few slides. So again, we've had 10 years of experience in the space. We have expert consultants. We use a proprietary team-based approach, and we have a 4+ School Guarantee. And we've been very successful with our clients. So in terms of the key takeaways that I would love for you to leave with today, the first one is to recognize that admission to business schools is extremely competitive. And so make sure to budget enough time. Again, you can never start too early. Now is the best time to start. You want to make sure you're prepared once you are ready to submit that application, and that you have enough time to do your research. Research not only on the schools, but also on what you want to achieve from business school. So make sure to, again, think about the schools you're interested in, and we can definitely help you think through that. And you want to make sure that you tailor your approach to each school so that you focus on fit and what the unique attributes of each school are that will help you attain your goal. And then finally, make sure to utilize seasoned experts, such as Stratus Prep. We collectively have been doing this for many years. We've worked with thousands of prior applicants from all over the world, and we are here to help enhance your odds for success. So I would encourage you to partner with us on test prep and applications to make the process as smooth as possible and to help you gain admission to your schools of choice. And on that note, we have a very exclusive partnership offer for you today. If you sign up at the link that's shown here, you will receive a free consultation with a senior candidate strategist, so definitely sign up. This is a really fantastic opportunity to get advice on your profile and get customized advice. And we're also offering 15% savings on GMAT and GRE test prep using the code TestPrep15, and 15% savings on our comprehensive MBA admissions consulting packages with code MBA15. And our offer expires on April 15th. So definitely sign up for that free consultation. You will find it to be very, very useful. And with that, I would be happy to take any questions. Let's see here. So we have a question here. Do you select any prospective students as your clients? Or do you only work with students in which you see potential to succeed? So we work with every client. We don't cherry pick clients. We believe every client has, the opportunity to apply to every school, and we are committed to every client's goal. So we do not select clients. We are very, very open and love to talk to any client about their goals, and we will work with you to customize your application to make sure that we are hitting your goal. Okay. So we have a question about someone who did not have excellent grades in, it looks like high school. So schools essentially will look at your college grades. High school is a bit dated. And the question is also focusing on, I don't have great extracurricular activities at the present moment. What can I do to overcome this? So there are a few things you can do. Think about what you have done in the past that you were very passionate about with respect to giving back to the community, and pick up similar activities now. See if there are opportunities to, for instance, join the board of a nonprofit or to join a committee of an organization and try to lead that committee. You can also try to do things through work. If there are opportunities at work to lead volunteer initiatives, for instance, that's a really great way to demonstrate leadership and to give back to the community. So if your organization that you're working with doesn't have a volunteer program, start one. So there's a lot you can be doing now. The thing to keep in mind, though, is that everyone volunteers, so you really want to take it that one step further. So take on that leadership role. So here we have a question on whether it's better to engage with a consultant after getting your GMAT score, since you will be busy preparing for the exam. When is the best time? So as I mentioned, now is the best time. Even if you are studying for your GMAT now, there are things you can be doing, for instance, on the extracurricular side that we can identify. So you can be doing things in parallel. So it definitely is to your benefit to sign up with a consultant now, because they can evaluate your profile and provide you with that feedback even while you're studying for the GMAT. So absolutely do not wait. Is it true that age is a strong factor in the MBA admissions process? i.e., the older you are, essentially, the less your chances. So while, as I mentioned, there is an average, it is just that, it's an average. So there are people who will be applying with more experience. The thing to keep in mind if you are an older applicant is you want to be very clear with respect to why you need the MBA now. So what tends to happen with older applicants is that because they've been in the workplace for a longer period of time, they've attained levels of leadership already. So you want to be able to show why the MBA will really take you that one step further. So it can be a bit more challenging, but it's not impossible. And I already gave 2 examples in this presentation of 2 people, the international applicant who went to Stanford and my current client who is a pharmacist who applied to Ross and Darden. So it's really about positioning your application to demonstrate why you need the MBA at this point in time. All right, so someone says, I do not have any international experience. Is it a disadvantage for me to apply in the top 40 business schools? So in terms of international experience, it does help to have a diverse perspective. But if you have not had the opportunity to go abroad, have you, for instance, had the opportunity to perhaps work on projects where you've interacted with colleagues globally, even if it's via phone or in meetings or teleconference? There are different ways of demonstrating your ability to have that global perspective. So I had a client who actually was working on a project, was based in the US, but was working on projects with people in Australia and in Singapore. So that is how he demonstrated his ability to have a diverse perspective. So think a little bit outside of the box if you're unable to actually work on an assignment abroad or do anything like that. Okay. So there's a question here, is it okay to have 2 different reasons for applying? For example, to gain or to focus more on strategy, such as through a consulting firm, and creating a social enterprise. So interestingly, I think what you're really saying is, can you have 2 different goals? And actually, most schools will ask you what your short-term and long-term career goals are. So when you think about your goals, what you want to do is, for the short term, think about how that short-term goal, which is your immediate post-MBA goal, how will that goal help you attain a longer-term goal? So to answer your question, absolutely, there will be a short-term goal and there will be a long-term goal with respect to what you would like to do post-MBA. But you want to make sure that it ties together and that there's a clear story, again, with respect to why you are pursuing those goals and how it relates to your experience in the past. Okay. Here's a question. What if someone has an MBA already? But in terms of the quality of education, the MBA degree acquired is not a match in comparison to the top 20 schools. So you can apply to schools. You just have to double check the requirements. Some schools will let you apply again if you already have an MBA. But again, the challenge with that is just crafting your story and talking about why you need that second MBA. Why did that first one not help you get to where you want to be? Some people, for instance, have very focused goals when they're talking about their first MBA. And so they talk a little bit more about gaining that broader cross-functional experience from an MBA, but you need to be very clear with respect to why that second MBA will help you. Okay, so there's a question here from a former military officer who has a GMAT score of 650, which is at the bottom of the 80th, at the 80% range of his target schools, has really solid extracurriculars and a decent undergrad GPA. Does it make sense to retake the GMAT to get an additional 40 to 50 points? So in this case, yes, if you can increase your score to a 700, you will be in a much stronger position to put yourself in a competitive role at these schools. The other thing to keep in mind is that if it's really turning out to be a challenge, my advice here would be to take the GMAT again, to study for it and take it, but also simultaneously take an online class in a quantitative subject. It could be an online class, it could be at a community college, but do well and get an A in that class, and that should help to, if you don't or cannot raise your score, should help to mitigate that a little bit. But definitely would recommend taking the GMAT in this case. So a question here. Is it a myth that only students from Fortune 500 companies get into top business schools? I work in a local company which is very well regarded in my region. Should I switch my job with a big brand named company? So the key here is to really focus on the quality of your experiences. Now, switching to a bigger brand company could make sense, but only if it ties in with your overall goals. If you're doing it just for the name, it, in my mind, is not necessarily going to help you. If you've had very strong leadership positions from that local company, and you have recommenders who can point to the experiences you've had there, then I think it's absolutely worth it to think about staying there, especially if you can take on additional roles of responsibility. So I wouldn't worry as much about that brand name. Think about the quality of your experiences and what you contributed to your organization. As a reminder, definitely feel free and do sign up to get that free consultation with a senior candidate strategist. Our spots are filling up. Okay. So another question here. Is it good to have one recommendation letter from my manager and a second one from my peers? So most schools will ask for at least one recommendation from a direct supervisor. It is not recommended to get a peer recommendation. We strongly encourage getting professional recommendation letters. Schools really want to see how you interact with others from a professional perspective and the kind of work you do. So unless a school specifically asks for a peer rec, would get 2 recommendation letters that are professional. Okay. Do 2 to 3 month employment gaps right before the application year look bad on the application? So you will have to put in why you had that gap. And again, it's really tough to comment on that specific case because these are all very case by case. But what did you do during that gap? If you were doing something where you were still building your skills, I think you can very create a compelling case in terms of why you had that gap. So it really comes down to what that gap was. And there usually is a section on the applications where you can explain that gap. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but you do need to explain what you did during that gap. Okay. So here's a question for someone who is thinking about pursuing a role in consulting post-MBA. Is it necessary to have work experience in a Big 4 consulting company if that's what you'd like to do? No, not necessarily. Again, when you talk about or think about what you want to do post-MBA, you really want it to tie with what you've done in the past. And a lot of that can be functional. So even if you've worked for a more boutique consulting firm, but that ties in with what you'd like to do post-MBA, you don't necessarily need that experience for wanting to go into a bigger consulting firm post-MBA. So as you can tell, there's a theme here, and it's just making sure that everything ties together with respect to what you've done in the past and what you want to do in the future. Are there any last questions here? Okay, so as a reminder, do sign up for a free consultation with a senior candidate strategist. And thank you so much for your time and for listening in today. I really hope this was helpful, and we hope to hear from you. So thank you again for your time.